wasn't supposed to be out in the woods that night. That's probably the first thing I should say, because if I had just stuck to the original plan, none of this would have happened. This was back in October of 2021. I was 24 at the time, living in upstate New York. I had just started a new job working remote, which meant I suddenly had a lot more free time than I was used to. Sitting in my apartment all day started to mess with my head, so I picked up hiking again, something I used to do a lot with my dad when I was younger. There was this one trail about 40 minutes outside of town. It wasn't anything special, just a quiet wooded area with a long looping path. Not very popular either. Most people went to the bigger state parks nearby, which I actually liked. Less people meant more peace. I'd been there maybe 4 or 5 times before this happened, always during the day. Never had any problems. But that day, I got there late. I remember checking the time when I parked. It was already around 5:45 p.m., and the sun was starting to go down. I hesitated for a minute, sitting in my car, debating if I should just turn around and go home. I didn't. I told myself it'd be a quick walk, just an hour, maybe less. I even brought a flashlight with me, just in case. That decision still bothers me. The trail starts off pretty open, with a wide dirt path and scattered trees, but after about 10 minutes, it gets a lot denser. The trees close in, and the path narrows. By the time I hit that part, the sunlight was already fading fast. I remember noticing how quiet it was. Not normal quiet either. No birds, no wind, nothing. Just silence. At first, I didn't think much of it. I had my headphones in, listening to music, so I figured maybe I just wasn't paying attention. But then I paused my music, and it was still completely silent. That's when I got this weird feeling. Not fear exactly, just unease, like I was being watched. I looked around, expecting to maybe see another hiker or something, but there was nobody, just trees. I shook it off and kept walking. About 5 minutes later, I heard something behind me. It sounded like a footstep. I stopped immediately and turned around. Nothing. I stood there for a few seconds listening. Still nothing. At that point, I told myself it was probably just an animal, maybe a deer or something stepping on leaves. So I kept going. But then it happened again. Another footstep. This time closer. I turned around quicker, my heart already starting to beat faster. Still nothing. No movement, no sound, just trees. That's when I took my headphones off completely. I started walking again, slower this time, paying attention to every little sound. And then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The footsteps only happened when I was walking. When I stopped, they stopped. I tested it a couple times. Took a few steps, heard it, stopped, silence. It didn't make any sense. I remember calling out, "Hello?" No response. I felt stupid even saying it, but at the same time, I was hoping it was just another person messing around or something. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I picked up my pace after that. The trail ahead was getting darker by the minute, and I realized I'd probably gone further than I should have. Turning back would have taken just as long as continuing forward to complete the loop. I decided to keep going. That was my second mistake. A few minutes later, I saw something up ahead on the trail. At first, I thought it was a fallen branch or something, but as I got closer, I realized it was a backpack, just sitting there in the middle of the path. It looked old, dirty, like it had been there for a while. I stopped about 10 feet away from it. Something about it didn't feel right. I don't know how to explain it. It was just a backpack, but the way it was placed, it felt intentional, like it was left there on purpose. I looked around again. Still nobody. The silence was even worse now. I should have turned around, right there. Instead, I stepped closer. I don't even know why. Curiosity, I guess. I crouched down and nudged the backpack with my foot. It didn't move much, like there was something inside it. That's when I heard it again. A footstep, right behind me, closer than before. I froze. I didn't turn around immediately. I don't know why, but I just couldn't. It felt like if I turned around too fast, something would be right there in my face. So I slowly stood up, and then I turned around. There was a man standing on the trail, maybe 20 or 25 feet away, just staring at me. I hadn't heard him walk up. He was just suddenly there. He looked normal at first glance, average height, wearing a dark hoodie and jeans. But something about the way he was standing felt off, too still, like he had been standing there for a long time. I remember saying, "Hey, is this yours?" and pointing at the backpack. He didn't answer. He didn't even react. He just kept staring. That's when I started to feel actual fear. I took a step back, and he took a step forward at the exact same time. It wasn't fast. It was slow, controlled, but it was enough. I turned and started walking away, trying not to panic. I didn't run yet. I didn't want to escalate anything, but I could hear him now, walking behind me, matching my pace. Every step I took, he took one too. I looked back once. He was still there. Same distance, same expression, just watching me. That's when I started running. I didn't care anymore. I just wanted to get out of there. The trail was barely visible at that point, and I almost tripped a couple times. But I didn't stop. I could hear him running too. Not sprinting, but running, keeping up. That was the worst part. No matter how fast I went, he stayed the same distance behind me. I pulled out my flashlight and turned it on, the beam shaking all over the place as I ran. The woods felt different now, smaller, like everything was closing in. I remember thinking I just needed to reach the parking lot. That was it. If I could just get back to my car, I'd be fine. But then I realized something. I didn't recognize the trail anymore. At some point, I must have taken a wrong turn. The path I was on now was narrower, overgrown, nothing like the main loop. And I didn't remember seeing any side paths earlier. I slowed down, breathing hard, trying to think. That's when the footsteps stopped. I turned around. He was gone. Just gone. I stood there, trying to catch my breath, scanning the trees with my flashlight. Nothing, no movement, no sound. For a second, I actually felt relief. Maybe I lost him, maybe he gave up. But then I heard something that made my chest tighten. A voice, from somewhere in the woods. Wrong way. I didn't care where I was going anymore. I just ran. Branches were hitting my face, my legs were burning, but I didn't stop. I could hear movement all around me now. Not just one person, multiple. Footsteps in different directions, keeping pace, surrounding me. I don't know how long I ran for. It felt like forever. But eventually, I saw something ahead, a faint light. I pushed myself harder, heading straight for it. As I got closer, I realized it was the parking lot. My car was still there. I almost cried when I saw it. I ran straight to it, fumbled with my keys, and practically threw myself inside. I locked the doors immediately and started the engine. For a second, I just sat there, breathing heavily, trying to process what just happened. Then I looked up and saw him, standing at the edge of the woods, watching me. Same guy, same hoodie, completely still. But this time, he was smiling, not a normal smile. Something wrong. I didn't stick around. I put the car in reverse and got out of there as fast as I could. I didn't stop driving until I was back in town. I didn't go home right away either. I just drove around for a while trying to calm down. Eventually, I did go back to my apartment. I locked every door, every window. Didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I tried to convince myself it was just some kind of messed up prank. Maybe a group of people messing with hikers. But there's one thing I can't explain. When I got back to my car that night, I remember throwing my flashlight onto the passenger seat. But the next morning, it wasn't there. I searched the entire car. Nothing. A few days later, I went back. I don't know why. Maybe I just needed to prove to myself that it wasn't real. The trail looked normal again. Quiet, but normal. No signs of anything unusual. I walked a little further in, staying close to the entrance this time, and then I saw it. That same backpack, in the exact same spot, like it had never been touched. I didn't go near it. I just turned around and left. And I haven't been back since. But sometimes, late at night, when everything's quiet, I swear I can still hear it. Footsteps, stopping when I stop. I've gone camping alone plenty of times before that night, so this wasn't something new for me. I'm not the kind of person who scares easily either. I actually enjoy being out in the woods, especially somewhere remote where there's no signal, No noise, nothing but trees and whatever sounds nature makes at night. That's exactly what I was looking for back in late September of 2022. I had taken a few days off work and decided to drive out to a national forest in northern Pennsylvania, a place I'd only been to once before, with a couple of friends. This time I wanted to do it solo. I packed light, just the basics: tent, sleeping bag, food, water, and a small hatchet I usually kept for cutting firewood. I got there around mid-afternoon, parked near a trailhead, and hiked about 2 miles in before finding a spot that felt isolated enough. It wasn't on an official campsite, just a small clearing surrounded by trees. Perfect, at least that's what I thought at the time. Setting up everything took maybe an hour. After that, I just sat by the fire, ate, and watched the sun go down. Nothing felt off. No weird noises, no strange feelings. Just a normal quiet evening in the woods. Around 9 or so, it got completely dark, like pitch black. The kind of darkness where your flashlight beam feels like it's getting swallowed by the trees. I stayed up for another hour or two, just listening to the fire crackle. Eventually, I decided to turn in. I put the fire out, zipped up my tent, and laid down. At first, everything was normal. I remember hearing the usual sounds you'd expect out there: crickets, leaves moving, maybe something small walking around in the distance. It actually helped me fall asleep. I don't know how long I was out, but I woke up suddenly. No reason at first. I just opened my eyes and realized something felt off. The first thing I noticed was the silence. It was the same kind of silence you don't expect in the woods. No insects, no movement, nothing. I checked my phone for the time. It was 2:13 a.m. That's when I heard it. A slow, deliberate crunch of leaves outside my tent. I stayed completely still, listening. Another step, then another. Whatever it wasn't moving like an animal. It sounded too controlled, too careful, like someone trying not to make noise, but still making just enough. I held my breath without even realizing it. The footsteps circled around my tent once, slow and steady. Then they stopped right outside the entrance. I could see a faint shadow through the thin fabric, just standing there, not moving. I didn't say anything. I didn't move. I just stared at that shadow, trying to make sense of it. After what felt like a full minute, the shadow shifted slightly, and then I heard something that made my stomach drop. A voice. "I know you're awake." It was quiet, calm, not aggressive. That somehow made it worse. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat felt completely dry. The voice came again, a little closer this time. "You shouldn't be here." I still didn't say anything. Every instinct in my body was telling me to stay quiet. Then the zipper of my tent moved slightly. Just a small tug. Not enough to open it, but enough to let me know whoever was out there was right at the entrance. I grabbed my hatchet slowly, trying not to make any noise. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold it properly. "There's a better spot," the voice said. "I can show you." That's when I realized something was seriously wrong. No normal person talks like that in the middle of the woods at 2 in the morning. I finally forced myself to speak. "I'm good," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a pause, then a soft chuckle. Not loud, not exaggerated, just wrong. "You won't be," he said. After that, everything went quiet again. No footsteps, no voice, nothing. I stayed awake the rest of the night, gripping that hatchet, staring at the entrance of my tent. I didn't hear him leave. I didn't hear anything at all. Eventually, the sky started to lighten. As soon as there was enough visibility, I got out of the tent. The first thing I noticed was the ground around my campsite. There were footprints, clear as day, boot prints. They circled my tent multiple times. But what didn't make sense was where they came from. There was no trail leading to them, no path showing where the person had walked in or out. Just circles around my tent, like they had appeared there. I packed everything up as fast as I could. I didn't even bother eating or cleaning up properly. I just wanted to leave. As I was getting ready to head back to the trail, I noticed something else. About 20 yards into the trees, there was a small clearing I hadn't seen the night before. In the middle of it was a chair, just a single wooden chair, facing directly toward my campsite. That alone was enough to make me feel sick. But it got worse. Tied to the back of the chair was a piece of cloth. I walked a little closer against my better judgment, and that's when I realized what it was. It was part of a tent. Same color, same material as mine, but mine was still behind me, fully intact. That's when I heard it again, behind me this time. I told you there was a better spot. I turned around fast, raising the hatchet. Nobody was there, but I could hear movement deeper in the woods. Slow footsteps, moving away. I didn't wait. I ran. I didn't stop until I reached my car. I threw everything in the back, got in, and drove out of there without even looking back. I didn't report it. I didn't tell anyone at the time. I just tried to forget about it. But a few weeks later, I was going through my camping gear at home, and that's when I noticed something missing. One of my tent straps. It had been cut clean off. I know I didn't do that. I would have noticed. I still go camping sometimes, but never alone anymore. And definitely not in places like that, because I still think about what he said. You won't be. And the part that bothers me the most is that it didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like a promise. I wasn't completely alone when I first planned that trip, which is probably why I ignored the feeling I had before I even left. Originally, it was supposed to be me and my friend Daniel going out for a weekend hike and overnight camp somewhere in the mountains of West Virginia. We'd done trips like that before. Nothing extreme, just getting away from everything for a couple days. But the night before we were supposed to leave, Daniel backed out. He said something came up with his family, which wasn't unusual, but there was something in his voice that sounded off. He kept telling me I should probably reschedule, that the weather might turn bad, even though the forecast was completely clear. I remember joking about it, telling him he was just looking for an excuse. He didn't laugh. He just said, just don't stay out there after dark if you go alone. I didn't think much of it at the time. I wish I had. I went anyway. I left early in the morning, drove about 3 hours, and reached the trailhead a little before noon. The place wasn't very popular. There were maybe 2 other cars in the parking area, but I didn't see anyone else around. The trail itself was long and led deep into the forest, eventually opening up near a ridge where you could camp. That was my plan. Hike in, set up, stay the night, and head back the next day. The first few hours were completely normal. The weather was perfect, the air felt clean, and everything looked exactly how you'd expect. Tall trees, scattered sunlight breaking through the branches, the occasional sound of birds or something moving in the distance. Around mid-afternoon, I passed the last marked point on the trail. After that, it became less maintained, narrower, a little harder to follow, but still visible enough. That's where I noticed the first strange thing. There were markings on some of the trees, not official trail markers, not paint or anything like that. These looked carved, deep scratches, almost like symbols, cut into the bark at about eye level. At first, I thought it was just people messing around, maybe carving random shapes. But as I kept going, I realized they weren't random. The same pattern showed up again and again, 3 long vertical lines and 1 shorter line crossing through them. Always the same, always facing the trail. I remember stopping at one of them and touching the cut. It wasn't fresh, but it didn't look that old either. That was probably the moment I should have turned back. Instead, I kept going. By the time I reached the ridge, it was already getting late. The sun was starting to dip, and the light had that orange tint to it. I found a decent spot, set up my tent, and gathered some wood for a fire. Everything still felt mostly normal, but there was something in the air I couldn't quite explain. It felt heavier, quieter, like the forest itself was holding its breath. I tried to ignore it. I made a small fire, ate, and sat there for a while, just staring out into the trees. At one point, I thought I saw something move between them. It was quick, just a shadow shifting behind a trunk, but when I focused on that spot, there was nothing there. I told myself it was probably an animal, maybe a deer. As it got darker, that feeling came back stronger. That same uneasy sensation, like I wasn't alone. I kept looking over my shoulder, scanning the tree line, but I never saw anything clearly. Eventually, I put the fire out and went into my tent. I zipped it up, laid down, and tried to relax. For a while it worked. I remember drifting off at some point, but I don't think I was fully asleep when I heard it. A faint tapping sound, At first, I thought it was something hitting a tree branch in the wind, but there wasn't any wind. The tapping came again. Slow, deliberate, 3 taps. Pause. 1 tap. My eyes snapped open. I didn't move. I just listened. It happened again. 3 taps. Pause. 1 tap. The exact same pattern as the carvings. That's when my chest started to tighten. The sound was coming from outside the tent. Close. I slowly reached for my phone and checked the time. 2:47 a.m. The tapping continued. Always the same rhythm. I forced myself to sit up, trying to control my breathing. "Hello?" I called out. No response. The tapping stopped immediately. The silence that followed was worse than the sound itself. I stayed like that for maybe a full minute, just listening. Then, very slowly, I heard something moving. Not walking, crawling. Leaves shifting, branches brushing against something low to the ground. And it was getting closer. It stopped right next to my tent. I could hear it breathing. That's the only way I can describe it. Slow, uneven breaths, like someone trying to stay quiet but failing. I couldn't see anything through the fabric, just darkness. Then something pressed against the side of the tent, hard enough to push the material inward. I froze. The shape didn't look right. It wasn't a hand. It wasn't an animal paw. It was too long. The fingers, or whatever they were, stretched unnaturally across the fabric. I felt my entire body go cold. Then the tapping started again, but this time, it wasn't on a tree. It was on the tent. 3 taps. Pause. 1 tap. Right next to my head. I grabbed the small knife I kept in my bag, holding it so tight my hand started to hurt. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but it was the only thing I had. "Go away," I said, barely above a whisper. The tapping stopped. For a second, I thought it might actually leave. But then, right outside the tent, inches from me, I heard a voice. "You followed them." It didn't sound angry. It didn't sound loud. It sounded certain, like it already knew something I didn't. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what it meant. "You saw the marks," it said again. "You kept going." The voice didn't sound human anymore. There was something off about it. The tone was wrong, like it was copying how a person speaks, but not quite getting it right. The pressure on the tent suddenly disappeared. I heard movement again, that same crawling sound, but this time it was circling around me, faster, more frantic. Then it stopped behind me. The backside of the tent shifted slightly, like something was leaning against it. "Now you stay," the voice whispered. That was it. That's what broke me. I didn't care what was out there anymore. I just needed to get away. I grabbed my bag, shoved it open, and unzipped the tent as fast as I could. I didn't even look behind me. I just ran. I ran straight into the trees, not caring about the trail or where I was going. Branches scraped my arms and face, roots nearly tripped me, but I didn't stop. I could hear it behind me, not running, not walking. That same crawling movement, but faster now, keeping pace. Every time I glanced back, I thought I saw something low to the ground, moving between the trees, but I could never get a clear look at it. The forest felt endless. Every direction looked the same. The darkness made it impossible to tell where I was going. But then, after what felt like forever, I saw something ahead, a faint light. I pushed myself harder, heading straight toward it. As I got closer, I realized it wasn't a light source. It was the sky, visible through a break in the trees. I burst out onto the trail, the actual trail, and nearly collapsed. I didn't stop, though. I followed it as fast as I could, barely keeping my balance. The sounds behind me faded slowly until they were gone completely. I didn't trust it. I didn't stop until I reached the parking area. My car was still there, empty, silent. I got in, locked the doors, and just sat there for a minute, shaking. Then I looked down at my hands. There were scratches all over them, deeper than I remembered getting from branches. And under my fingernails, there was dirt, dark, almost black, like I had been digging. I don't remember falling. I don't remember touching the ground like that. I drove out of there as fast as I could. I didn't go back for my tent or anything I left behind. I never wanted to see that place again. A few days later, I got a text from Daniel. It was just one message. Did you see the markings? I didn't reply. I didn't know what to say. Then another message came. I went there last year. That was it. He never explained anything else. I tried calling him after that, but he didn't pick up. Eventually, I just stopped trying. But sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet, I hear it again. 3 taps. Pause. 1 tap. And every time I do, I can't shake the feeling that whatever was out there didn't stay in the woods. I didn't plan on staying the night in the woods. That part matters, because if I had actually prepared for it, brought proper gear, and told someone exactly where I was going, even something as simple as charging my phone fully, this might have ended differently. But it was never supposed to be that kind of trip. It was just meant to be a short drive, a walk to clear my head, and then back home before dark. This was in November of 2023, a few weeks after I moved out of my apartment in Ohio. I'd been dealing with a lot at the time. Job stress, a breakup, just that general feeling of everything stacking up at once. So I started taking these random drives after work, usually out into quieter areas, just to get away from everything for a while. That day, I ended up going farther than usual. I don't even remember exactly which road I took, just that I kept driving until the houses disappeared and the roads got narrower, eventually turning into something that barely felt maintained. It was already late afternoon when I found the trail. There wasn't a sign or anything official, just a dirt pull-off on the side of the road and a narrow path leading into the trees. I almost didn't stop. Something about it felt off, even from the car. But I told myself that was the whole point, getting out somewhere unfamiliar. So I parked, grabbed my phone for a flashlight, and started walking. The path was barely visible at first, like it hadn't been used much. Leaves covered most of it, and the trees were packed close together, blocking out a lot of the remaining light. I remember checking my phone and seeing it was already 5:12 p.m. I told myself I'd walk for maybe 20 minutes, then head back. That was the plan. About 10 minutes in, I realized how quiet it was. Not the normal kind of quiet you get in the woods, where there's still distant movement or insects. This was complete, total silence. Even my own footsteps sounded too loud, like they didn't belong there. I kept walking anyway, trying to ignore it. Then I noticed something strange about the trees. At first, I thought it was just the way the bark looked in the fading light, but as I got closer, I realized there were marks on them. Not carvings exactly, more like impressions, as if something had pressed into the bark hard enough to leave a shape. The odd part was that they weren't random. They looked like handprints, but not normal ones. The fingers were too long, too thin, stretched out in a way that didn't seem possible. I stopped and stared at one for a while, trying to make sense of it. It didn't look old either. The edges were still fresh, like it had been made recently. That should have been enough for me to turn back. Instead, I kept going. I don't really have a good reason for that. Curiosity, maybe, or just not wanting to admit something felt wrong. A few minutes later, I reached a point where the path split into 2 directions. There were no signs, no markers, nothing to indicate which way to go. I stood there for a moment, trying to decide, when I heard something. A faint sound, off to my right, like someone exhaling slowly. I turned toward it, but all I saw were trees. "Hello?" I called out. No response. The sound didn't come again. After a few seconds, I convinced myself it was just the wind or something shifting in the branches, even though I hadn't felt any breeze at all. I ended up taking the left path. I don't know why. It just felt slightly less dark than the other one. That's the only reason I can think of. As I walked, the light faded faster than I expected. Within minutes, it was almost completely dark. I turned on my phone flashlight, the beam cutting a narrow line through the trees. That's when I noticed something else. The path behind me didn't look the same anymore. I turned around fully, shining the light back the way I came. It was still there, technically, but it looked narrower, more overgrown, like it had changed somehow. That's when the unease started turning into something stronger. I decided it was time to head back. I turned around and started walking, trying to retrace my steps. But after a few minutes, I realized I wasn't seeing the fork in the path again. It should have been right there. Instead, the trail just kept going straight. That didn't make sense. I knew I hadn't walked that far past it. I stopped, my heart starting to beat faster, and turned around again. That's when I heard it. Footsteps behind me. Slow. Heavy. I spun around, shining the light into the darkness. Nothing. Just trees. The footsteps stopped immediately. I stood there, listening. After a few seconds of silence, I took a step forward. The footsteps followed. Exactly one step behind mine. I froze. They stopped too. I tried it again. Another step behind me. Perfectly timed. That's when panic really started to set in. I didn't even think. I just started walking faster. The footsteps matched me. Faster, closer. I broke into a run. So did they. But no matter how fast I went, they stayed just out of sight, always directly behind me. I didn't dare look back again. I just kept running, focusing on the path ahead. That's when I saw it. A light. Not like my phone's flashlight, warmer, softer, like a lantern. It was off to the side of the path, deeper in the trees. I hesitated for half a second, then changed direction and ran toward it. I didn't care what it was. Anything was better than whatever was behind me. As I got closer, I saw a small clearing. In the middle of it was a wooden structure. Not a full cabin, more like a shed, but larger than you'd expect to find out there. The light was coming from inside. The door was slightly open. I ran straight to it, shoved it open, and stepped inside, slamming it shut behind me. The room was small, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet, empty except for a single lantern hanging from a hook in the ceiling. The light flickered slightly, casting shadows along the walls. I stood there, breathing heavily, listening for anything outside. At first, there was nothing. Then, a single footstep, right outside the door. I backed away slowly, my eyes fixed on the handle. It didn't move. The footsteps didn't continue. Just that one. Then silence. Minutes passed. I don't know how many. It felt like forever. Eventually, my breathing started to slow down. I told myself I was safe, that whatever had been following me was gone. That's when I noticed something on the wall, carved into the wood, just like the trees. The same long, stretched handprints covering almost every surface, some overlapping each other, like they'd been made repeatedly over time. My stomach dropped. I turned slowly, scanning the rest of the room. That's when I saw the floor, dirt, not wooden planks, just packed dirt, and in it, footprints, dozens of them, all leading toward the center of the room, not away, toward. I took a step back, my foot hitting something behind me. I looked down. It was a phone, old, cracked screen. I picked it up instinctively, pressing the power button. The screen flickered on for a second, just long enough to show something, a photo, taken inside this same room. The angle looked like it was from someone standing in the corner. In the center of the image was a person, sitting on the ground, facing away from the camera, and behind them, something tall, thin, standing in the shadows. I dropped the phone immediately. That's when the lantern flickered harder. The light dimmed for a second, then came back. But something had changed. The shadows on the walls were moving. Not from the lantern. They were shifting on their own, stretching, reaching. I backed toward the door slowly, my hand fumbling for the handle. That's when I heard it, breathing, inside the room. Not mine, right behind me. I turned. There was nothing there, but I could still hear it. Close. Too close. I grabbed the handle and pulled the door open, practically falling outside. The clearing was darker now. The path I came from was gone. Just trees in every direction. And then I saw it, standing at the edge of the clearing, taller than I expected. Its shape barely visible in the darkness, but enough to make out the outline. Long arms, hanging too low, head tilted slightly like it was studying me. It didn't move at first. It just stood there, watching. Then it took a step forward. The sound of it hitting the ground was wrong, too heavy, too slow. I didn't wait. I turned and ran into the trees, not caring where I was going. I could hear it behind me almost immediately. Not running, just walking, but somehow keeping up. Every few seconds I'd catch glimpses of it between the trees, always the same distance away, always watching. I don't know how long I ran. At some point, I tripped and hit the ground hard. The air left my lungs instantly. I rolled onto my back, trying to catch my breath. That's when I saw the sky. Faint light. Dawn. I sat up quickly, looking around. The woods looked normal again. No clearing, no structure, no sign of anything. And about 50 feet ahead was my car, exactly where I had left it. I didn't question it. I got up, ran to it, and got inside. I locked the doors, started the engine, and drove away as fast as I could. I didn't stop until I was back on a main road. I haven't gone back there since. But there's one thing I can't explain. When I got home later that morning, I checked my phone. The battery was almost dead, even though I barely used it. And in my photo gallery, there was a new picture, taken at 3:17 a.m. It was dark, blurry, hard to make out, but I recognized it immediately. It was that room, the same one with the lantern, except this time, the angle was different. It looked like it was taken from the doorway, and in the center of the image was me, standing there, facing the wall, and behind me, something reaching toward my shoulder.